Good evening and welcome. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this Cabinet meeting and also welcome anyone watching online. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take attendance of officers attending virtually and to explain how proceedings will work. Thank you, Susan.
Good evening. Can I confirm the following officers joining us remotely can hear us and that we can hear them? Andrew Figgis?
Yes.
Good evening. Chloe
Right.
Gray?
Good evening. Yes, present.
Anthony Roach?
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Louise Symes?
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
And Phil Doggett.
Yes, I'm here.
Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you, Susan. Apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Daniel Allen. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Item 2, minutes. The meeting on the 11th of February 2025. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meetings of Cabinet held on the 11th of February 2025. I'd like to propose to have a seconder, please. Councillor Devon to second. Any comments? No, can we go to the vote, please, Susan?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Business. There's been no other business notified. Item 4, Chair's announcements. 1, in accordance with the Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. Recordings will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site, alongside the documents from the meeting. 2, members are reminded that this Council has declared both a climate emergency and an ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that, as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, having that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. 3, members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Item 4, for the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business of the agenda, wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. 5, Ian Falstone, retirement. As I'll say that again. Ian Falstone, retirement. As members will be aware, Ian Falstone will be retiring shortly after more than 35 years at the Council. Ian joined the Council on the 12th of February 1990, an Assistant Building Control Officer, after answering an advertisement in the St Albans Observer. In September of that year, he began with the Central London Polytechnic studying BSc Building Control Surveying Introduction, receiving first-class honours in July 1995. Peter Mosshead of Planning said at the time that this result was achieved by hard work and dedication. Ian moved to the post of Building Control Surveyor as a result in October 1995. In June 1996, Ian passed the Institution of Building Control qualification. This gave him corporate membership and promotion to Senior Building Control Surveyor in October 1996. Further promotions followed, becoming Principal Building Control Surveyor in February 2002, and in November 2005 became Building Control Manager. In June 2009, Ian was awarded a postgraduate diploma in Emergency Planning Management. On the 1st of September 2009, he became Head of Development and Building Control. From August 2012, Ian acted up as a Strategic Director Planning, Housing and Enterprise, and on the 1st of June 2018, he became the Regulatory Service Director following a restructure. Ian played an integral role in the creation of a multi-award winning Hertfordshire Control Service in 2016, a shared service which now operates for 8 districts and boroughs, which is also able to offer services to the development industry. Without Ian's drive, commitment and political nous, the lengthy and often painful journey to agreement would certainly not have been a successful conclusion. Those same skills were also evident as Ian helped steer the council through our local plan process, culminating in its adoption in November 2022, our first new plan since 1996. As chair of the Council Safety Advisory Group, Ian has also helped to ensure multiple large events proceeded safely, the enjoyment of residents and visitors, including many large festivals and concerts at Nebworth House. Ian has been a tremendous servant to this council, and the legacy of what he achieved will last for many years. We wish him a long and enjoyable retirement. Do you wish to respond?
With dry eyes, I hasten to add, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much. We will miss, I particularly will miss you. I will keep looking in your direction in the future to reassure us, and you will not be there. Thank you. Item 5, public participation. We have no public participation this evening. Item 6, items referred from other committees. 6A, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, proposed parking tariffs for 25-26 to consider as a standalone item. 6B, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan to consider within item 11. 6C, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Museum Storage Options Part 2 to be considered with item 16. 6D, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Museum Storage Options Part 1 to be considered with item 17. 6E, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, RIPA Annual Report to be considered as a standalone item. 6F, Finance Audit and Risk Committee, Third Quarter Investment Strategy, Capital and Treasury Review, 24-25, to consider with item 13. 6G, Finance Audit and Risk Committee, Third Quarter Revenue Budget Monitoring, 24-25, to consider with item 14. So 6A, Overview and Scrutiny Committee proposed parking tariffs for 25-26. Is no addendum to car parking rates published in supplementary agenda document. Note, this referral has been published as a supplementary document and Cabinet members have noted this when considering the item. Councillor Tyson to present the referral.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't have much to say on this, except you can see the recommendations that emerged from what was quite a lengthy debate at Overview and Scrutiny, evolving from the original call-in. And yeah, you've got the 3 recommendations there, notably number 2 because it was pointed out that the mathematics weren't quite as obvious as they ought to have been for a 10% increase in the charges. So they've been recalculated, and you've got those in a supplementary document, I believe. So yes, that's our referral to you from overview and scrutiny on the parking charges.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. On the Nebworth, sorry, on the Royston parking, we had recent news about Princess Mews. Do you know about that? And have you included that in your comments? Or shall I go through it?
If you know the details of what was then the recent news, you can do it, because I can't tell you exactly what happened at the town council meeting on the evening before the overview and scrutiny committee met. But I think that's what you're referring to.
Thank you. I doubt what Officer Louise Symes has provided for me. The council operates the Princess Mews car park in Royston, adjacent to what was Morrison's, under a licence agreement with the landowners McCarthy and Stone. This licence agreement recently came up for renewal, and the council's estates team has been in discussions with the landowners about entering into a new licence agreement. McCarthy and Stone have recently formally notified the council that they will not be granting a new licence for the Princess Mews car park, as they're about to commence development on the old Morrison's site and require occupation of the car park to situate their site compound. They have asked the council to vacate the premises by the 10th of April 2025, and therefore the car park will be closed to the public from Monday the 7th of April. Notices informing the public about the closure of the car park were displayed on the site and also on the council's website and various social media channels. The estates team has expressed the council's interest in entering into a new arrangement, subject to contract, to operate the car park after their works are completed. McCarthy and Stone have not yet confirmed if this will be possible. If you've got any further queries, please could you contact Louise Symes directly. For the second query, Officer Ian Cooper has very kindly done the figures again. Would you like to go through those, Ian? Give us a flavour.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chair. So as was spotted at overview and scrutiny, there was an error in the spreadsheet we used to calculate the new fees and charges. Basically, all the rates that were above £2.50 were still just going up by 10 pence, whereas they should have gone up by at least 20 pence and in some cases up to 40 pence. The supplementary item entitled Car Park Corrected Rates has the full list of those rates affected. It includes the current rates, the rates you considered at your meeting when you previously considered this, that you agreed then, and also the revised rates that would be the correct rates if you were to apply the principle of 4% rounded up to the nearest 10 pence. Also included in that table is the forecast that we've used for our modelling in terms of usage and purchases of tickets at those rates for the forthcoming year. Obviously, they are just forecasts. We don't know what's going to happen. And the implied income that would be retained by the council on that basis, which is net of VAT and where we have to pass the income onto third parties. I wish to confirm that the total amounts in terms of additional income forecast were correct for the rates we presented to you, i.e. the incorrect rates. So it still stands that the forecast, based on the assumptions, would be that with the rates you agreed last time would be a £35,000 additional income. If you were to adopt the rates as presented now to you for those tariffs, that would be a further additional £35,000 additional income on top of the inflation assumption. And so making a decision on that, I guess I could, from a financial perspective, both options would be allowable. They would be within the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Albert, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'm not sure, wasn't sure, Chair, whether we're moving to the debate at this point. No, I'll save. I'll save for myself for the debate. Yeah.
Thank you. The third recommendation about the relationship between overview and scrutiny and cabinet, I was quite surprised by, because I thought that was our relationship. That certainly since May, since we've had a Labour and Cooperative administration, that in fact cabinet have taken what has been said at overview and scrutiny, taken it back, worked on it, reported back, and that we intend that that relationship will develop. So I think we are in agreement on that. Can I have a proposer, please? I'm happy to propose. A seconder? Councillor Winstanley, thank you. Right. Shall we go to debate? Councillor Albert?
Yes, I'm probably still slightly confused, but that's probably me. I think just in terms of the various referrals that we've been asked to look at, I clearly think that item 3 doesn't really need a debate. I thought that was very much as you said, Chair, our standing policy. I think I've really valued the contributions of scrutiny. We've obviously got Tom here this evening. We've had Councillor Barnes as chair of the committee previously. I think the considerations of scrutiny have been hugely valuable in terms of helping to kind of hone, refine, and obviously raise questions for cabinet to consider at our meetings. So I really value our relationship, and I value going to those meetings as to attend and listen to them. So I think I would hope that was absolutely we can endorse. Obviously there was quite a lengthy debate around Royston and Knebworth. And I think obviously also as part of that debate was the information relating to what the potentially Knebworth Parish Council are proposing in terms of supporting some additional sort of funding on the sort of 3 after sort of 3 things, and similarly with potentially with Royston Bid and Royston Town Council, and obviously Royston Town Council certainly have had a discussion at one of their meetings around this. So it seems to me is that, particularly bearing in mind with our new parking machines, that we should work with our colleagues in Royston and Knebworth, and to be able to sort of maintain our sort of current position based on the fact that obviously that they will potentially provide in some additional funding, as has happened in the past in terms of Royston, in terms of the 3 after 3 initiative. And I think that's something I would hope that the cabinet will be happy to take into account. Clearly, we haven't got formal, I think, information this evening on that, but I hope that we can, do that and take that on board, and obviously seek your advice, Chair, how you want to handle that specific aspect. But I certainly would hope that we would be able to work with colleagues in Royston and Knebworth, in taking that initiative sort of forward, and then be able to get some really good information on footfall through the new parking machines and so on. I think in terms of the second recommendation, obviously thank Ian and his team for updating that modelling. But my view would be that, particularly bearing in mind that we have been round the area forums, obviously publicised what we were proposing to do. It does seem to me that we should stick with the charges as they were prior to the update that Ian Cooper has provided with us. I think it also, at least in terms of some of the car parks, also helps to support some all day parking for maybe people who either can't afford or indeed are not buying a season ticket would be less appropriate for them. But I think overarchingly, I think we should stick with the amounts that we'd previously consulted upon, rather than look to actually take that additional increase on what would reflect the 4% increase. So I mean, that would be my view on those three issues, sort of, Chair, as to how we take those forward, and that's what I would propose. Obviously get your guidance on how you want to handle those individual recommendations, particularly bear in mind, obviously, we haven't got formal information, I think, this evening, unless obviously Mr. Fulstone tells me otherwise, or that from Royston and Nebworth councils and so on.
Thank you. I know it's not usual, but could I bring in Ian Fulston at this point, just to give us up-to-date information on Royston and Nebworth?
Thank you, Chair. In answer to Councillor Albert's question, it's my understanding, following a meeting with the Town Council and Royston Bid last Tuesday, that their decision-making will be next week. So we won't be in a position to know what, if any, funds they're willing to put forward to a subsidy scheme until then. My understanding, talking with Louise Symes, is that Nebworth is very keen to operate a 30-minute free period, and they have the funds ready for that.
Thank you. That's worth asking. Councillor Thomas.
No, I just wanted to sort of get clarification and recommendation, see if it was specifically if it was specifically about parking or more broadly, just because I know certainly in my portfolio, the positive relationship with overview and scrutiny is very highly regarded and has influenced significantly the shape and nature of reports that have come forward to Cabinet. And we've worked quite substantively on various projects in that portfolio. So I wasn't at ONS, but I obviously served on ONS previously. So just keen to make sure I understand the nature of that recommendation.
Thank you. I mean, I was at ONS, but I was there as a Cabinet member, not as a member of the committee. So I'm not really the person to ask that.
Are you going to propose alternative recommendations, amendments to these?
No.
No, you're going to accept overview and scrutiny's recommendations.
Well, as it reflects reality.
So I think, Chair, that we need to specifically decide on the 3 points. I think we would clearly accept item 3. And I have no issue with that, and I think all colleagues here are nodding vigorously. So I don't think we need to debate that. That we should just accept that. But I think in terms of item 2, that perhaps in reverse order, that we should, I believe that Cabinet should decide this evening to continue with the charges as set out prior to the scrutiny meeting, and not look to actually further increase the charges in line with the updated modelling that Ian Cooper has helpfully provided us with. So I think that's something I think specifically I would propose. And then on the first item, I would say that think that we would obviously thank Royston Town Council, Royston Bid, and obviously Nebworth Parish Council, and I would obviously be happy to delegate to the executive member that we would in principle support the working with them on those suggested subsidies in terms of the free after 3 in Royston and the 30-minute free parking in Nebworth, and we delegate that sort of final decision to the service director and the executive member for regulatory. I assume would be a bit where this would sit. I think if that sort of meets the monitoring officer's requirements, hopefully for an alternative proposal. But obviously to thank the scrutiny colleagues for their consideration of this.
So to be clear, you're accepting 2.3, but you'd like to essentially amend 1 and 2 to have an amalgamated version, which is to accept the hard work of Royston Town Council and the support in working with them in relation to the 3 after 3, and also to work with Nebworth, did you say, and to delegate the decision, the final decision on this matter, to the Director Regulatory in consultation with the executive member? Yeah. Yes. Does
that cover 2.2?
So that's your proposal. Who's seconding that amendment?
Dave.
Well done, Doug.
And then Chair, then there's or Jeanette, then there's clearly the other item, the second recommend that. Well, it's really just to note that I think proposing that Cabinet continue with the charges as previously provided in the tables before, and not take up the updated modelling as Mr. Cooper has supplied us, and so we should stick with the position that was actually taken to scrutiny with the layout and tables of charges.
That reconfirms the decision that you made
at scrutiny.
Yeah.
At scrutiny.
No.
Prior to
cabinet.
Yeah.
Prior to cabinet.
Yeah. So in January.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that clear?
What about the Royston bid?
Which Royston Town Council and bid. Okay.
And Frankfurt Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Yes, thank you very much to Councillor Tyson, to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think it was something that was worth doing, can you say, and hopefully the end result is acceptable. Do we need? Is that the end of the debate? Councillor Debenham?
I need to say that I think I agree with Councillor Albert. This should be deferred. We can't really make a decision until we know whether Royston bid are going to come up with the goods, and so I think it's right to delegate. Yeah.
Are we ready for a vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right. Next is 6E. Again, from the Review and Scrutiny Committee, the RIPA annual report. Please note the referral has been published as a supplementary document, and Cabinet members have noted this when considering an item. Councillor Tyson, to present the referral, please.
Yes, simply to say that we've recommended adoption of the amendments to the to ensure compliance with the Act that the monitoring officer had proposed in her report, and that was a straightforward decision, I think. And I have nothing else to say about it.
And so you went through.
Nothing really to add as part of the annual review, some slight amendments, and the additional amendments to Appendix B is to reflect the director's titles from the 1st of April.
Thank you. That's a change. Okay, so 2.1, the recommendation is that the council, so the cabinet adopts the amended RIPA policy Appendix A as amended with updated directors' titles from the 1st of April. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Thomas. And a seconder, please, councillor Debenham. Debate? No debate yet. Susan, could we go to the vote, please?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Item 7, Growing Baldock Strategic Master Plan. I will introduce in place of Councillor Daniel Allen, who has sent his apologies. And
could I just at this point just declare I'm also at this meeting as a county councillor, so they're clearly obviously have some interest in this, but I have discussed with the monitoring officer and obtained a dispensation which allows me both to obviously participate in the debate and speak and vote as appropriate. But just wanted to declare that before you started the item.
thank you. The council recommends, the Cabinet recommends to council that the Growing Baldock Strategic Master Plan attached to Appendix A is approved and adopted as a material planning consideration for relevant planning decisions relating to the site. Can I have a proposer, please? I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Debenham, a second. Thank you. Can I call on Nigel Smith?
Thanks, Chair. Just to give a quick overview sort of through UFMA Chair. So as has just been outlined, the report seeking Cabinet support to refer the Growing Baldock Strategic Master Plan to full council for adoption as a material planning consideration. As Cabinet will be aware, there's a number of sites around Baldock identified for development in our adopted local plan, which includes site BA1 to the north of the town, which is the single largest allocation, sites BA2 and BA3 to the southeast, as well as land between Royston Road and the railway, which is earmarked for employment. These sites are all owned by Hertfordshire County Council, who have entered into a development agreement with Urban and Civic to deliver the scheme. And they're collectively allocated for more than 3,000 homes, a new employment area and supporting infrastructure. This includes new crossings of the railway, a GP surgery, a local centre and education provision. So as with other master plans that we've presented over the last year or so, council officers and consultants have worked closely with the developer team to prepare the document, and that's included workshops, design review, public consultation, and numerous presentations to the council's internal project board. Key plans and extracts from the master plan are included within the committee report aid explanation, and that report also provides an assessment of the scheme against relevant local plan policy requirements. As you'll be aware, this is a particularly large and complex project, and because of this, and because of new information that's come forward through the master plan process, there are certain areas of the scheme where different solutions are now proposed to what was set out in the plan. It's the proposed location of the GP surgery, the access strategy for the sites to the south of the town, and the approach to secondary education. The reasons for those changes are set out in the report, and I'm happy to take any questions on that or any other matters. But in summary, officers are content that the master plan sets an appropriate strategy for the growth of Baldock, notwithstanding those departures. As set out in the report and in similar previous reports, the master plan is just one of the multiple stages in the planning and delivery of the site. So its purpose is to provide a high-level design framework for future applications and to allow the scheme to progress. Subject to Cabinet referral tonight, full council will be asked to consider the master plan following the county council elections. The there'd be a presentation of key plans and information to full council prior to any debate, the opportunity for all councillors to be briefed as well, and we would also anticipate attendance from the developer team at any future full council meeting to present or answer any questions from councillors. As councillors are probably aware, constitutionally they're effectively barred from attending both cabinet and full council, so we tend to direct the applicant team towards the latter where we have all members present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Nigel? Councillor Stanley?
I've got a question, but it's probably more for you, Chair, in lieu of Councillor Daniel Allen. It's more a procedural one. And looking at the schedule, we're just discussing this here tonight, but there's a gap between it potentially coming to full council. Can I ask why there's that gap?
Thank you. It was a tricky decision because of the timing, and we've had, I think it's 9 strategic boards on the Baldock Master Plan, 2 of which have been in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we have now got to the point where we've talked out most of the contentious points, and we're down to aspects which we're going to actually go with, things like the location of the school. But it was felt that we would like to get agreement through Cabinet as soon as possible, so that there is some assurance for the developers who say I've actually sat through 9 very long meetings on this, but also ensure that as councillors that we have our say. And of course, we've got the elections in the middle. So that's why we came to this compromise, whereby we are going to discuss this tonight and then wait until after the annual meeting, which is at the end of May, which will be in July. But we are cognizant of the fact there is a time gap there. So on the first Cabinet after the annual meeting, the acting director for this area will provide an update on all strategic planning matters. So anything new that's come up about the Baldock Master Plan will actually be brought to Cabinet then, which will be shortly before the full council. That answers your question. Thank you. Any other questions? Should we go to debate? I'll say you have not appeared, but I'm going to say Councillor Albert.
Yeah, I did appear, then I disappeared, which is probably good. It's partly well. First of all, let me start with the question, which is, do we need a potentially additional recommendation just to reflect what you said and what Nigel has said in terms of bringing back a paper to the cabinet meeting in June? I think I'd just like to absolutely accept the assurances from you and from Nigel, but probably just need just to top and tail it to say that we'll add that as additional to the recommendation.
As far as I'm concerned, because it will be within the general strategic update, I don't think we need to add anything extra to that.
It's a matter for you, Chair, if you want to do it. I think it's an action to take away. I'm sure Mr. Smith will be cognizant of your instructions without the need of a recommendation.
Yes, so yes, it will come up under that general heading. However, we do that legally. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Debenham, I know, was on the board. And Councillor Tyson was, but can't speak, unfortunately. He's actually here.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say, as you say, we've had numerous meetings and we've gone round and round in circles. And I just want to thank our officers for keeping everybody on board. And I think we've got to move this to the next stage. And so with plenty of time still for the detailed planning, but yeah, I think time has come to move on.
Thank you. And it is one stage. No, it's basically stage 2 of the whole planning process. Councillor Albert.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with that. I think the paper's a really good one. I think the document at the back, I think is well reasoned and well argued. I think there's some really, I think both good tables and graphics in there. I mean, when we had our sort of our briefing with Mr. Smith, Ms. Falstone, I think I particularly pointed out the graphic around sort of drainage, and I think which is a really important area, but bear in mind recent sort of floods in different parts of our district. So I think this is great. There clearly is, and I guess my in supporting the document, a recognition there that there are still, I think would be fair to say, outstanding issues in terms of the Knights Templar School and both the funding of a new school and where it's going to be and so on and that clearly a number of options are set out in the paper. But I think you know that we obviously have got forthcoming elections. We've also got opportunities for further consideration along the way and discussions with the county council and elsewhere. So I think we've reached a point. I think that this is actually something now that I think is strong enough to take to council as a master plan that sets out the kind of aspirations for this area and hopefully meets many of the wishes of residents for that sort of one bulldog solution that I know has been something that has come out of the consultation. So I think within those issues and questions and obviously just to probably whether either Mr. Fulson or Mr. Smith might want to just comment on what the next, just to be clarified for complete reference, what the next steps are in terms of the school. But I'm in principle supportive of this paper and think we should then recommend it to full council when it meets in July, presumably, and obviously, but that officers are happy to take away that point about that we will get an update to whoever's in cabinet for their June meeting, that they have that discussion there, and obviously that can be, if there are changes or new information, that also then can be reflected forward into the decision that full council would take at its meeting. So happy, Chair, to support the paper.
Thank you. Shall we go to the vote?
Would that question about the school just be picked up before we?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Albert. You're right. Yes, the school and the secondary school issue is quite sort of complicated and convoluted tale, so I won't go through it in detail. I mean, in terms of next steps, essentially there's agreement on all sides around what the preferred outcome is that we'd like to achieve, which is the relocation of Knights Templar onto the BA3 site in new facilities. You're right, there's a funding gap at the moment. What we have essentially is an undertaking from all the parties to work together with other relevant stakeholders, so the local MP, Department for Education, the Academy itself and the ward councillors to essentially continue pursuing that. We know at the moment Department for Education funding is allocated to the RAC crisis, but that's not to say other funding streams won't become available further down the line as this progresses.
Thank you. That was helpful. Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 8, Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan Examiner's Report. I will present on behalf of Councillor Allen. This report asks for Cabinet support to send the Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan to a local referendum. Neighbourhood plans are produced by local communities for their areas. They provide the opportunity to set specific planning requirements or address areas of local concern that cannot always be captured in district-wide plans and policies. This neighbourhood plan has been produced by Barkway Parish Council and Nothampstead Parish Meeting. Public consultation on the draft neighbourhood plan took place in May and June 2024. The neighbourhood plan was then submitted for examination. That examination has now taken place. The examiner has recommended that, subject to the inclusion of certain modifications, the neighbourhood plan should progress to a local referendum. Both the Parish Council and Council officers have had the opportunity to review the examiner's recommendations and are content to accept their findings. Subject to cabinet approval, referendum will be held within the neighbourhood planning area alongside the County Council elections on the 1st of May. To meet the deadlines for this to happen, this decision is being treated as urgent and therefore not subject to call-in. This urgency has been appropriately notified, considered and agreed. It is a simple majority vote in favour of the plan at referendum. It will be formally adopted or made. It would become the 9th neighbourhood plan in North Hertfordshire. Once approved, neighbourhood plans are considered alongside the district's local plan and other relevant considerations when dealing with planning applications. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognise a huge amount of work has been undertaken by the Parish Council, their advisors and the local community to prepare the neighbourhood plan for Barkway and Nothampstead, and to thank everyone involved for their efforts. So the recommendations are 2.1, we note the examiner's report for Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan. 2.2, approve following the inclusion of the examiner's proposed modifications to the Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan as set out in Appendix A. The Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan and to approve to proceed to a referendum. 2.3, instruct the counting officer to conduct a referendum on Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan. 2.4, delegate subject to recommendation 2.3 and the outcome of the referendum, the decision to make the Barkway and Nothampstead Neighbourhood Plan to the Service Director Regulatory in consultation with the Executive Member for Planning and Transport, as previously agreed by Cabinet in July 2018. May I have a proposer, please? Councillor Debenham, a seconder. Councillor Winstanley, thank you. Before we go into debate, any questions you want to ask of the officers about this? No? Shall we go to debate? I think it all seems perfectly reasonable. It's something that's been in the offing for a long time. It's well thought through, and that we should give our consent so that the elections can go ahead on the 1st of May. Shall we go to the vote?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 9, devolution white paper interim plan submission. which is Appendix B, published in supplementary agenda document. Can I call on Anthony Roach to present, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep the comments fairly brief and succinct, unlike the process we are going through, which has taken rather a large amount of time. So members will appreciate that the covering report had to be published without the main appendix. This was just due to the timing of when the document was being finalised. It has been worked on behalf of the County Council, the 10 districts and boroughs, and also the Police and Crime Commissioner. And we have all contributed officers into the drafting of the document. So far, it has been through, I believe it is 7 of the 12 approval processes, and has been agreed by all those that have debated it so far. We have 3 tonight, including ourselves, and 2 more tomorrow night. And the hope is that we will be able to submit a single submission on behalf of Hertfordshire on or before Friday, which is the deadline that the government has set. Members will appreciate that the devolution white paper covered a lot of ground. And since the letter received from Jim McMahon at the beginning of February, which is Appendix A in the report, we have had a fairly short amount of time in which to pull together our initial thoughts as the Hertfordshire authorities. I stress this is initial thoughts. This is an ongoing process. Whilst there are some options identified within the submission, namely a single unitary, a model for 2 unitaries, a model for 4 unitaries, and 2 options for 3 unitaries. None of those should be considered as a final option. It is all still subject to ongoing review, ongoing investigation, ongoing discussions, as we hopefully try to narrow down proposals before the deadline for final submissions at the end of November. Also worth flagging in my introduction that a lot of the discussion tends to be centred on the local government reorganisation side of things, understandably so. But of course, a large element of the devolution white paper, and an important element of it, is the potential for a devolution deal for Hertfordshire and the creation of a strategic authority. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. What the document in front of you sets out is that there are ongoing discussions both within Hertfordshire and also with neighbours as to what that strategic authority could be, which could be Hertfordshire on its own or could be Hertfordshire plus a neighbour or neighbours. We are hoping to have clarity on that the other side of the 1st of May. And then that will also help shape the proposals for the number and geographies of the unitary authorities. I will pause at that point. I'm sure members have got questions. You will see that the recommendations are that you note the appendix and then delegate the final sign-off. The reason for that is we recognised with this going through 12 sets of democratic processes, there was the potential that there might be changes requested, in which case we need to have that flexibility of agreeing any last-minute changes by way of delegated decision. And that is the reason why those recommendations are in front of you. Chair, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Anthony? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Anthony. I was wondering if you could just shed a bit of light on whether or not there are any risks with this associated for our authority with officer time sort of being spent working on so many options, and sort of what the demands of this process look like in terms of for our officers, given how lean we're already running.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Thomas. A lot of the demands have landed on me at the moment. I've basically done 60-hour weeks every week since Christmas that I've been working, and that's not sustainable. should add, LGR wasn't, and the devolution white paper wasn't the sole reason for that, but it was a big reason for it. So there is certainly capacity issues, particularly amongst the district and boroughs. We don't have the same manpower that the county council does. I think as we look at what we're intending to do next, which is await the government, any government feedback on the interim submission, await the outcome of the county council elections, because clearly that could have a factor in the views of the county council. We will be having discussions amongst the authorities, particularly around that resourcing point, as to being honest with ourselves, what resource do we need to get to that end of November deadline? And it may well be, despite the government's request, that we don't use consultants. That request is in the white paper and in some of the guidance that has come out around it. There is a degree of inevitability that we might need to, particularly if we end up in a situation where we are unable to agree a single submission for Hertfordshire, and we in fact end up with two or more competing proposals. So we will be having those conversations over the next month or so. But yes, acutely conscious of the potential impact on officer time, particularly if I have to start delegating more than I have been so far.
Thank you. Can I add that Anthony's been to a lot of meetings. Daniel has been to a lot of meetings. I've been to some meetings. The last meeting I went to was on Thursday, so I'm as up to date as that, which might not be totally up to date. But within Hertfordshire, there is a great deal of consensus in the districts and boroughs about how we go about things, and we are supporting each other, which is really, really good. And we're talking to each other and talking with the county council and the police and crime commissioner. You know, a very positive vibe there. Plus, of course, it's now the outstanding item for all councils who are not yet part of unitary authorities, and that is recognised by the government, who has given support, by the district council network. So Anthony, Daniel and myself went to a conference on Thursday and Friday, a lot of which was about this, but also about change and how to manage change, how to lead change, and how to do so without killing yourself, I think it's fair to say. And today I was at LGA for a transformation conference, again, about how councils and organisations actually look at what they're doing, decide how they're going to change that in the future to actually fulfil their aims. So there's a new body of thinking coming through. So it's just not just a case of us as councils and officers doing as we've always done and adding this on top. What we will have to do is, and I hope I don't speak out of turn, if I do, I'm chair today, is that we need to have a conversation about just looking at the council plan and making sure we can do it all in the time constraints we're talking about at the moment, and making sure that if something's got to go, something's got to slip, that we're actually in charge of that. I don't know if Anthony would like to comment on my comments.
No, other than I think, Chair, that the point you made about how well, in particular, the district and boroughs have been working is a very salient one. I should add, just in case they're listening, we have been working well with the county council as well. But the district and boroughs have essentially been, we've had two work streams running, one with the county and one without the county. And the one without the county is solely to try to get the district and boroughs on the same page to then inform the discussions with the county. The work has been shared amongst a number of chief executives. And I should hasten to add that I've not even been the one that's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that drafting, although I did proofread the whole document on Friday with colleagues. So yes, just grateful to colleagues in other districts and boroughs who have also been pitching in. It's very much been a team effort, as Councillor Bryant said.
Councillor Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. Just a few questions, Anthony. First of all, I didn't know whether there's anything you can say or whether we can circulate the I think was mentioned in the report on page 9, the Local Government Boundary Commission's guidance on democratic representation. Is there anything you can summarise succinctly? I suspect it's a long document, but if there's anything you could say on that, or whether that could be circulated. The document also mentions town and parish councils. We've clearly got a community governance review underway. Is there any further indication, do you think, when we might hear? I agree with what's in the paper about trying to get some views from government around this particular area, particularly in relation to town councils. I think we're concerned, obviously. I mean, I was doing an Ofsted inspection today where we talked about staff well-being, and I think staff well-being is a really important one here. Is there anything you can say in terms of how we're engaging with our staff, and obviously if there's any particular issues or concerns that you have there? And then really finally, I guess, has there been any early consideration yet of when we might need to set up, whether it's a North Herts project team or indeed a wider project team to take forward some of this work? And clearly, obviously, just very, very finally, that we'll obviously need to make sure that all members are cited of the submission. Clearly, they can see it from the cabinet papers, but it may well be want to try and publish that to members when the submission is eventually agreed later in the week.
There you are, Anthony. You've got a few questions there.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. I've jotted down 5 points, so hopefully I will cover them all. In terms of the Boundary Commission advice, I think the simplest thing to do is to circulate it. There's a short version and a long version. We've been asking the government for it, and I believe they circulated it on Thursday or Friday morning last week. So as fairly late in the day. So I think probably the easiest thing to do, actually, rather than circulate, if I put it on the intranet page that we've set up on the hub, and then let members know that I've put it there. And for point 5, in terms of letting members know about the final submission, I'll send an email update around end of the week, or ask a colleague to, given I'm actually on jury service, despite my presence here tonight. And again, we'll put that onto the hub, and then both officers and members can see it. So in terms of town and parish councils, you probably won't be surprised to learn that that has been exercising some of our other district and borough colleagues. I'm aware of one meeting last night where that was pretty much the hot topic of the day. We're in a slightly unusual position in that we have, of course, got our ongoing community governance review, whereas a number of councils are talking about whether they should start one prior to reorganisation, or put the onus on a new unitary council to do one after. I think the key point that I would flag at this stage is what would be helpful, I think, would be consistency of approach across Hertfordshire. But clearly, if some areas want to progress with the community governance review, that is entirely in their gift. And so we sort of wouldn't be able to stop them if they wanted to. The reason why I say it would be helpful to have a consistent approach is that I think, as part of teasing out what the future delivery models look like, be that, whatever the unitary footprints end up being, what the strategic authorities end up delivering, where we might want to continue with shared services or joint ventures, or or trading services to each other. All of these sorts of models we haven't even started considering yet. But actually, quite an important factor there is, what would we want the town and parish councils to do to fill in any gap? And that might depend, of course, on what unitary model you end up with. Because if you have, let's use two examples. If you have a 2-unitary model which starts with populations at over 600,000 people, you might very well argue that you would want to put in universally that tier of town and parish councils across the piece to provide representation closer to the people. On the other hand, if you go with the 4-unitary model, each starting at around the 300,000 mark, there could be an argument that you don't have quite the same need for town and parish councils as the smaller unitaries would be closer to their community to start with, and would also obviously be covering a smaller geography. I think the challenge is, as I said, working out what services we might want the town and parish councils to deliver, and then how do you ensure consistency of that? Because we have to recognise that the capacity of a rural parish council is very, very different to the capacity of a small town council, never mind a large town council. And part of the proposals are town councils for places like St Albans, which would obviously be of a significantly different order of magnitude to, say, the rural parishes we have. I will flag there is a discrete town and parish council work stream set up as part of the white paper working group. It hasn't quite got going yet, but it will be wrestling with all of these points that I've been flagging. So watch this space. Hopefully we will have more answers as time progresses. In terms of staff well-being and concerns about that, you probably won't be surprised to learn that's been uppermost in my thoughts for quite a large part of the time since December. In terms of well-being, haven't had any particular issues reported yet. I will flag we haven't done a staff survey in this period, so that might be something that we can think about doing just to touch base with staff. We have our monthly staff briefings where I've been giving an update as honestly and openly as I can at each of those meetings, and I will continue to do that. We also have a hub page set up, which we are regularly updating as and when there is news. And in terms of concerns, frankly, my big concern is our ability to recruit the closer we get to reorganisation, particularly roles which are hard to fill. I have a real concern we just won't fill them. And that probably means using expensive locums in the short term, but we shall see how that pans out. Not least of which because we don't yet know the timescales we'll be working to and how those compare to, say, councils on the priority programme. And so what you might find is quite a lot of staff moving around if they are leaving reorganisation processes elsewhere. We'll just have to wait and see, but that's a real concern. In terms of North Herts project team, I have got a small group of officers that have been identified to support me. In terms of member involvement, let's take that away and think about it. We have been working on, I say we, myself and Christine have been working on an engagement plan, a stakeholder engagement plan, which will include both staff, councillors, and also key external stakeholders. Looking to finalise that. It's still very much in draft stage, not yet discussed with Val or Daniel. So we need to work through that, and as part of that process, we can think about how we might want to resource our own internal team. But at the moment, given so much of this is happening county-wide, we don't quite need an internal governance process in quite the same way at the moment. But obviously, we will keep that under review, particularly if we find that different competing proposals begin to emerge. If we're not able to stay together as the 12 authorities, then we might well need to consider processes to put forward our own case. Hopefully that has answered your questions, Councillor Albert.
It's okay. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on Anthony's point about maybe staff consultations, staff surveys, how staff are feeling in general, especially given I'm sure I know it's a situation between many different councils about things like shared services and such. So I think speaking to everybody and taking surveys of staff would be a really good idea.
Thank you. You weren't expecting an answer, were you, Councillor Allen? That's okay. Any more comments? Can I, so those are actually, we're just on questions there. So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Winstanley, thank you. And shall we go to debate? Councillor Albert.
Well, just very briefly, Chair, to say I think the paper has, I think, set out the issues, set out, I think, what seems to be a sensible range of options. Clearly, the devil's in the detail, but I'm content with the submission that we're hopefully going to do alongside the other, districts and boroughs later in the week. So yeah, very happy to support the proposal and obviously the further work that will be needed after this.
Any other debate? Okay, shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 10, UK Shared Prosperity Fund process and proposed allocation for 2025-26 spend, which is addendum report and appendix 1 published in supplementary agenda document. There's no substantive difference on this and the agenda pack version. Councillor Tamsin Thomas to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you sets out the delegated approval for executive members and directors for the process for the 2025-26 UK Shared Prosperity Fund spend allocation. And we are seeking Cabinet's endorsement of the outline proposals, which are set out in the body of the report. Just want to note that we've got Andrew, Chloe and Steve on hand to answer any questions that colleagues might have. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government announced a further year's funding for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund in January this year. This additional year is acting as a transition year as the government decides on a longer term strategy for funding this type of local government and communities spend in general. The original Shared Prosperity Programme ran for 3 years between April 2022 to March 2025, branded under the Levelling Up agenda of the previous government. The programme sets out a range of defined interventions under 3 main themes: community in place, support for business and people and skills. North Herts Council this year has received an allocation of £490,564 for the year, which includes a minimum required capital spend of just over £90,000. For those looking for comparisons to last year, it's approximately 51% of what we received last year. My officers have worked across all North Herts Council departments, and the proposal before us tonight sets out 6 work streams that could be supported from the allocation. Each work stream covers the 3 themes previously mentioned, and more details on how they achieve this can be found in the report. The Active Communities Community Wellbeing and Digital Inclusion Scheme aims to build upon and continue the work of the Healthy Hub and seeks to enhance health and life chances while building a sense of community cohesion. The Economic Development Programme, coupled with the contribution to Herts Futures and Herts Business Support, enables the implementation of the new Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan, which will be delivered in summer this year. And this aims to have a significant impact on our engagement with businesses in the district and to give them a sense of being of North Herts, not just in North Herts. We will also be looking to deliver projects that encourage high-wage, high-growth commerce in sectors such as bioengineering, advanced engineering, film and media, and other growing industries. The Sustainability Grant Scheme and Renovation of Estates and Communities Buildings Programme aims to improve the district's environmental performance and the fabric of our public buildings. These projects are covered by the capital element of the allegation, together with some revenue spend, which can be converted to capital if required. These schemes are designed to cater for any underspend on other projects prior to the end of the period as well. The overarching proposal aims to either continue work that is already being delivered through the previous shared prosperity funding, or implement new schemes that support several high impact projects that will benefit the local community. This is our last year of prosperity funding, and therefore ensuring that the money is well spent and allocated to ensure maximum impact. As I mentioned, the detail for each of these programs is set out in the report. However, the team are here to answer any specific questions from Cabinet as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any questions for Councillor Thomas on her report? Councillor Albert.
Just thanks, Chair. I mean, I think this is a really good paper. I mean, I guess the two questions I'd got. One, which is maybe whether we've done so far any evaluation of the money that we have spent in previous years and the impact of that. I wasn't sure whether there's been a report. I might have missed it. It probably was, but I might have missed it. But be interested to know that. And I guess the second question is thinking through that, as you say, it's a very significantly less pot of money to spend this year than in earlier years. But is there any sense that we might need again the grants panel that we set up previously to look at specific applications? In fairness to say, because the money is less, that clearly that maybe the necessity is less for having such a panel, and which I think was really useful previously, but it may be that it's less of a necessity, bearing in mind this amount. But be interested just to get the views from officers around that.
I mean, Andrew, are you able to answer Councillor Albert's questions, please?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. I hope you can hear me. Andrew Figgis here. On the question of evaluation, we're undertaking evaluation at the moment as part of the wrap-up process for the 2022 to 25 programme. And so we're looking at that over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, as we do have to fill in the return for the MHCLG to complete that particular tranche of funding. It's quite difficult to do it because the original programme was so backloaded with the funding. Then most of the projects actually appeared and have been undertaken very late in the whole process. So it's been difficult to undertake any evaluation before now. We had probably two-thirds of the funding in the last year. And so this is why we've postponed it until the last possible moment. In terms of the grants panel, we decided for the moment, although grants are extremely good and they lead to good outcomes and so on, we decided on this occasion, given the reduced sum of money that we have to spend, that we would stick to some core council capabilities. Hopefully next year, after the transition year, when the government has decided what it wants to do in the longer term, we will be able to go and resurrect the grants, because I would very much like to do it simply even from an economic development point of view, to be able to provide some sort of funding to companies and also to community groups as well. The trouble is that we just simply haven't had the funding gap this year to go and be able to do it.
Yes, sorry, and I'm just picking up Councillor Albert from Andrew's point. So just focusing on that grants panel, I don't see why that couldn't necessarily happen for at least one of the potential projects set out in the table, purely just from a governance perspective, and to give councillors that opportunity to have that discussion regarding the project and how some of it will be spent. So that isn't an issue, even though the spend or the allocation is a lot less this time round. I'm happy to take that offline with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chloe. Does that answer your questions, councillor? No. Any other questions about the report? So the recommendations are that Cabinet consider and approve the proposed outline distribution of funding allocated to the Council by Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government for 2025-26 under the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to specific schemes, and delegate approval of individual grants and payments relating to schemes funded by UK SPF 2025-26 to the relevant directors in consultation with the relevant executive members as identified with reference to table 8.1. Can I have a proposer, please? Proposer?
I was proposing, but I think Ian's proposed and Chloe's accepted taking offline, adjusting an element of that proposal.
Just to clarify that point, no, the panel's only a recommending, it's a non-decision making body. So if you could still incorporate that if appropriate, given that the team still isn't aware of this. So just making sure they can fit it all in. So I would suggest it's better to have that offline discussion, because I don't think Chloe and you haven't, it hasn't been discussed with Claire Morgan's team yet. So.
So that actually isn't part of this recommendation, is it?
Well, Councillor Albert can make that recommendation. All I'm saying is, in the past, obviously we've got the criteria under the UK SPF. So it establishes the basis. We have done it previously in a similar fashion, but they're unaware of that at the present time. So I'm happy that Chloe's going to take this up with you and the team. We perhaps leave it that it's not a set recommendation.
Could we say something like that we would take away the consideration of the necessity for a grants panel where appropriate, and that we can take that way for further consideration, because I totally accept that there may be less of a necessity this time because of the sums of money involved, but I think if at least we can really take up sort of Chloe's point that we would take that away for further consideration, and I'd just like to make sure that's kind of built into that further piece of work.
Yeah. So I'm trying to fit the wording
Yeah.
into 2.2. That's what we're looking at, isn't it?
Well, if I
Just
could,
a separate recommendation might be more appropriate.
yeah. So I think a 2.2 that says, something like consider a grants panel where necessary for recommendations to parts of the Shared Prosperity Fund, something like that.
Can I change the necessary to appropriate?
Yeah.
Councillor?
Sure.
Is it something like to set up a grants panel where appropriate?
To consider a grants panel where appropriate for some of the grant funding. I'm just trying to find it. It's 8.1, is it?
We're just trying to get the wording. So consider a grants panel where appropriate for some of the grant funding.
Yeah.
Yes. So my suggestion is that we add to 2.2 a new sentence after table 8.1, consider a grants panel where appropriate for some of the grant funding. Okay, so you are now you're the proposer. Can we have a seconder for that amendment? That's Councillor Thomas. So do we need a vote on that amendment? I'll just accept it.
I didn't catch if you did an initial proposer and a
No.
seconder. If you
No.
didn't, then Councillor Albert is proposing, and he's proposing it with the amendments.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
With Councillor Thomas with the amendment, yes?
Yeah.
So we've got 2.1 as it stands, 2.2 with the added sentence about a grants panel where appropriate. And we've got a proposer and a seconder. Can we go to debate, please? I'm just waiting to see if anybody else, because you might want to write a reply. Although you've got no one to reply to at the moment. Councillor Albert.
Well, only briefly, Chair, just say to welcome the paper. I think it's a good run in terms of and establishing how we're going to do it and what the governance is going to be. Welcome the work that Andrew's going to do and is doing, and the team around evaluation, and hopefully that report can be sort of circulated around when it's done. Important to be able to understand that. But very happy with to propose, and hope the paper will be agreed.
Shall we go to the vote?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 11 is the corporate peer challenge action plan. Note this referral has been published as a supplementary document, and Cabinet members have noted this when considering the item. Councillor Tyson to present the referral, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the overview and scrutiny were asked to note the report and the action plan specifically, and also to comment on the action plan. And the main comment on the plan was that we were pretty much okay with everything in it. The only criticism really was that the recommendation from the peers was that the action plan should be termed in terms of smart objectives, and that the aspirations expressed in the action column of the action plan were somewhat imprecise, worthy as they were. And could have done with a bit of firming up in order to make them comply with the idea of the smart objectives. Then Anthony reassured us that as things progressed, there would be more sort of specific indications of actions as they progressed in the update section of that report. So that was the main comment that came out of overview and scrutiny about the action plan, but we're happy to refer the report to you.
Thank you. Is there any other information that you want from this meeting?
No, it was just to note the comments. That was part of our brief.
Thank you. So can I go to Anthony Roach to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Tyson. Absolutely echo Councillor Tyson's points. We discussed it at scrutiny. The recommendations from the peers were quite narrative in nature, which does tend to a narrative response, which is what's on the action plan at the moment. But as we work with executive members over the coming months, we want to try to firm those up into more specific actions with more specific timescales. Working with you and officers to do that. And one of the things we discussed at scrutiny was potentially going back there in approximately 6 months or so, so that they can review our progress against the action plan. Worth acknowledging that the Corporate Peer Challenge took place at the start of November. The devolution white paper, which we were discussing 2 items ago, was published in the latter part of December and has subsequently shifted the goalposts somewhat. And therefore, there may be some things on that action plan in response to the recommendations that we may wish to deprioritise. Equally, there may be some things that are more important and should have greater priority with everything else that is going on. So I think that is an ongoing conversation that we need to have as the leadership team and the cabinet to just firm up where we are going to put our resource. So I think that's probably all I want to say, Chair, at the moment. Just one other procedural point. The LGA does require us to publish the action plan within 3 months of the final report being published. So by approving it tonight, and then we'll publish it onto our website, we will be complying with that. And there will also be a follow-up from the peer team some point in the autumn, date to be confirmed. So again, that would be good reason for us to work together to firm up the action plan and progress the actions that we see as still being important, irrespective of what might happen to the future of North Herts Council in the next few years. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anthony. Any questions for Anthony? It very much fits in with what we've been talking about before. No. So the recommendation is that Cabinet approve the Corporate Peer Action Plan. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Debenham, and a seconder, Councillor Albert. Debate. No. I think I'd just like to reiterate that we have our action plan. We have our plans how to work with it. Obviously, a new dimension has been thrown in since December, which means, as I said before, that we will need to look as a leadership team and a cabinet at the priorities on it, but then continue working with our action plan, our amended action plan. Any other comments? Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. It's 9:10. Do you want a short break? Should we have a short break? It's 7 minutes till 9:15. Thank you. We're all back. We all here? Yes. Item 12, Council Delivery Plan 2024-25, Q3 update. Councillor Ian Albert to present the report, please.
Just thanks, thanks, Chair, and obviously thanks to obviously scrutiny colleagues. Although let me say, I would say one thing back to obviously to, I know we've got Councillor Tyson with us, and I really obviously thank scrutiny colleagues because actually in terms of the council delivery plan, they've really helped in the past in actually honing it and actually making it, I think, very relevant and make some really good questions. But the obviously scrutiny committee now are obviously, I think it's right to say, are trialing a slightly different approach that's touched on in the in the paper here, whereas at the last meeting they obviously looking at inviting specific executive member areas and obviously having a sort of a deeper dive, if you like, into those executive member areas. Now, I don't think, and I mean, I appreciate that you said earlier that Councillor Tyson couldn't necessarily comment on this, but I don't think there were any formal recommendations back from scrutiny on that, but that might be something that scrutiny colleagues might want to reflect on, because actually their comments on the delivery plan, which they didn't formally discuss at the scrutiny meeting, if that's not going to happen, then maybe it could, and then maybe also that that if there are any formal recommendations to come to cabinet in terms of their deep dives around portfolios, that might be something that the scrutiny committee might like to have a think about. But I appreciate that's slightly off tap, but
well,
yeah.
Councillor Tyson, if you wish to comment, you may do so.
Well, I think Councillor Albert's got a good point in that in doing the deep dives on the portfolios, it may well be a good idea to actually sort of develop some kind of recommendations from that process. Otherwise, I have to say we had an extremely interesting presentation and follow-up debate and discussion on the planning portfolio, and thank Mr. Falstone again for his contribution and his team's contribution to that, which was extremely comprehensive. I'll take this opportunity to do that. In terms of the reference to the corporate peer challenge action plan was in the overview and scrutiny brief, was to comment upon the action plan itself, which is why I relayed those comments to yourselves this evening. Although in your own agenda, it was just to note the content of that.
Yeah, it sounds like the offer's there. Thank you. Councillor Albert?
Yeah, so I think that's probably and probably something I'm obviously happy, you know, obviously to liaise with sort of scrutiny colleagues, how they might continue to look at the council delivery plan more broadly, alongside obviously the deep dives, you know, in terms of the portfolios, which I think is actually, certainly having sat in and listened to that discussion, I thought was really valuable discussion, and I certainly learned quite a lot from it. So yeah, so welcome that. So just in terms of formally the paper here, sort of colleagues in front of you, obviously some changes to milestones are sort of set out in paragraph 8.2, and you can see the projects there that are obviously highlighted where some milestones have changed. 8.4 also highlights where the KPIs that are amber are red, where actions in place, but improvements in the indicators won't necessarily be seen until after the end of this current financial year. We're also looking to, obviously recommended there to add the obviously the local government review and devolution as a corporate risk. We clearly might need to also add it as a specific project. We touched on that earlier on, and obviously also we've got later on to the museum storage item, and that clearly might also be wanted to be added as a further sort of risk as well, or certainly as we take that project forward. But the paper's there really just for noting some specific recommendations there in terms of 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3 about adding that new corporate risk. Really happy to move the paper and happy to pick up any questions. Obviously, Mr. Cooper's also here to help with any questions on the paper. I move, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? No. So the recommendations are that Cabinet notes the progress against council projects as set out in the council delivery plan and approves the changes to the milestones, Appendix A, notes the performance against the performance indicators and confirms the action detailed in paragraph 8.4, approves addition of a new corporate risk for local government reorganisation and devolution. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Albert, and a seconder. Councillor Winstanley, thank you. We go to debate. Yeah, should we go to the vote? Wait forever.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 13, third quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury review, 2024-2025. Councillor Sean Nolan to present the referral from FAR. Thank you, Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. Two key points kind of came out the discussions around this particular paper. The first was looking into the future in terms of the council as it is now, considering the fact that in future we'll be looking to be borrowing to spend on capital programs. So there's questions around that and the effect that would have, clearly in a position where we can lend cash to ourselves to borrow against, which would be a better rate than available on the open market. But that would lead to a reduction overall in terms of investment income going forward. So there was some consideration around that and how we've managed that. Other questions then were looking into the future again, but looking at the future of the government under local government reform, what would happen to the council's assets and how things would move going forward. Obviously, that is very much still to be determined, but I think the general point was that whatever form this council ended up in, its assets and everything along with it would go into that new body and become part of that. I think other than that, there's nothing much else that was raised by the committee on this particular paper.
Thank you. And any questions for Councillor Nolan? No. Councillor Albert, would you like to present the report?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, just really fairly briefly, and obviously thanks to Sean and the finance team, and obviously Mr. Cooper and his team for all their work on producing the reports. I mean, clearly we spent quite a lot of time at the budget meeting talking about investment strategy, and certainly the investment strategy paper, the Annex F that formed part of the overall revenue and investment paper, I think set out in some detail how we're looking to deal with our future sort of capital financing requirements, the minimum revenue provision that we need to set aside to take that into account. And clearly, obviously, yeah, as Sean says, that we are likely to be moving into that borrowing position in future, internal borrowing position in the coming months. So that obviously is something that we're very cognizant of, and we will make sure that we carry on reporting back to the finance and clearly to Cabinet and Council where necessary on these issues. The paper itself, Chair, I think just really to highlight the that there's rather less sort of slippage in this report because there was a lot of work done at Q2 and in advance of the budget meeting around our capital programme. But where there is change, it's set out in table 2 in the paper, and you can see the particular items there where we're looking at various forms of sort of carry forward, particularly of some of the programme. Table 3 obviously also sets out where we've got some other changes to forecast spend, and clearly, obviously, one of those you can see some of the projects there and things like Alton Head Common Wear and the community facilities refurbishment and so on, where there is some obviously carry forwards. Again, obviously, just really to obviously ask Cabinet to note those, and then clearly obviously just really important to say that all our investments are in accordance with the Treasury strategy, and the details of those investments are set out in paragraphs 8.11 and 8.12. There's a few recommendations in front of you, colleagues. 2.1 where we're asking to note the forecast, 2.2 where we're asking you to approve some adjustments, 2.3 noting position and availability of capital resources, and clearly obviously 2.4 we're asking you to note the position of the Treasury management activity as at the end of December. I'm sure, Chair, you'll want to read those out in full, but I'm happy to move those for recommendations to Cabinet. And again, obviously myself and Mr. Cooper here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Winstanley.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Sean mentioned in his opening bit about the borrowing, which is mentioned in 8.8, about having to potentially borrow to fund the programme. I just want, and you mentioned it as well, Councillor Albert, I just wondered if we could have a little bit more info on that borrowing, in terms of the benefits of borrowing internally. Again, Sean mentioned that briefly about it being lower cost, but yeah, a bit more information on the benefits and or any interest implications of that borrowing, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Who'd like to take that?
If I start, then obviously, sure, Mr. Cooper can come in with some further techie elements, and I mean, crudely, any element of borrowing will reduce our treasury income, our investment income, which is so far this year has been nearly £3 million, which is very welcome. And I think that's, it's been an important element of where we have been able to manage our finances. The internal borrowing is considerably cheaper than actually doing that. Obviously, if we had to borrow externally to the markets, and again, Mr. Cooper probably remind us what the percentages are, but they would be, 5. I think still probably in excess of 5%. We obviously in our budget papers at the last month, obviously talked colleagues through where we need to borrow, the minimum revenue provision that we're forecasting that we will need to set aside, and obviously that of course has some impacts on our overall budget and what savings that we may need to find in the future, where we're having to set maybe increasing sizes of minimum revenue provision to one side. But I don't know if Mr. Cooper want to add anything further to that on impacts.
Yeah, thank you. To provide some reassurance, the forecast in terms of both minimum revenue provision and the impact on Treasury income, Treasury costs, are factored into the budget forecast for next year. We are currently looking like we will need to move into a borrowing position around about the end of this financial year, so around now. It depends on the capital spend in the next couple of weeks, how far projects move forward. In terms of the difference in rates, as you'll see in the paper before you, we've got investments around about the 5% mark in terms of income we're generating from Treasury investments, and at the moment, rates for external borrowing, depending on the term of that investment, will be 6% plus. So there's a margin there of at least 1%. It's also been true that going back in time, all capital spend has a cost to it. because as soon as you spend capital, whether you're in a bone position or not, you therefore deplete your cash reserves, and therefore there is a cost to that in terms of lost interest. Back in COVID-19 times at 0.1%, that was negligible. Now, when interest rates have gone up to 5%, it's much more significant. Obviously, we are looking at forecasts whereby interest rates will start to come down over the next year, and so therefore those costs will start to decrease as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? So, recommendations. That the Cabinet notes the forecast expenditure of 16.816 million in 2024-2025 on the capital programme, paragraph 8.3 refers. 2.2 approves the adjustments to the capital programme for 2024-25 onwards as a result of the revised timetable of schemes detailed in tables 2 and 3, increasing the estimated spend in 25-26 to 0.627 million. 2.3 notes the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in table 4, paragraph 8.6, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. And 2.4 is asked to note the position of treasury management activity as at the end of December 2024. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert, and a seconder, please. Councillor Winstanley. Shall we go to the debate? No debate? Shall we go to the vote?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 14, third quarter revenue budget monitoring 2024-25. Councillor Sean Nolan to present the referral from FAR.
Thank you, Chair. So some of the sort of key elements of discussion that took place around this particular report were looking at the I think it's one that's already come up tonight, and it's an ongoing risk that we are having to look at and the council having to manage, which is around staffing, around the effects that open roles has in terms of delivering projects, around the effects of the extra work, so which has been discussed tonight is having on existing staff and in terms of being able to deliver on projects as well going forward. There was quite a lot of discussion around sort of what is being done on that. Is there anything else the council can do? I think it was pretty well answered by Ian Cooper in terms of all the different things that have been looked at, the benchmarking of both pay levels and of other benefits, and trying to find ways of making it as an attractive place as possible to work under the circumstances, which I think we've again already previously discussed tonight that the council finds itself in. Other elements being looked at were some of the financial indicators over a few areas. I think the one around burials and numbers there was a particular point of discussion. I think there's some surprising statistics behind that. Also looking at, I think, the plans going forward to try and increase the resource to support commercial refuse and recycling as well, about how that can potentially bring in further income. And as well around the planning applications, understanding how those fees are tied to the completion of applications, or at least decisions being made around them, and therefore the expected income from that side of things being slightly lower than expected, with some decisions currently outstanding. Another point to raise as well around the financial risk and the monitoring on that. I think it was good to see that clearly that had been well managed in terms of providing enough provision to cover that off. It appears that we're not going to be requiring the release of all that risk budget as well. So clearly the processes in place seem to be sensibly putting enough aside to cover risks, probably overestimating, but making sure the council's not going to be exposed in any areas there. And that's everything I would wish to add on that report.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Any questions, Councillor Nolan? No. Councillor Ian Albert to present the report, please.
Cheers. Thanks, Jen. Again, obviously, thanks to Sean for the consideration of the Finance Committee. The report's obviously in front of you this evening, and I'd particularly draw colleagues' attention to table 3 in the report, where there's obviously some fair amount of sort of slippage and changes occurred there, which obviously it does help to improve our general fund balance at the end of the year. But ultimately, clearly, this will still be money that will be spent. Now, the reasons for the delays are provided in table 3, and I certainly draw colleagues, attention to some of these things. There's quite an eclectic mix of things. We've touched on, staffing on a number of times, this evening. We can see, changes, for example, in there around the sort of commingled recyclates, which are probably is very close to Councillor Allen's heart, and it's quite a significant change there. Obviously, I think the committee, I think Sean also sort of discussed the changes in, for example, in sort of burial income. That was quite an interesting discussion around that at the committee. But these are obviously all important areas for obviously us, and I think for Cabinet to be aware of. You'll see that on garden waste that we've that actually the overachievement of income there is indicative of a higher number of subscribers, which is again obviously is positive as we go into the new sort of financial year and the new obviously waste contract and so on. So again, as I say, that do obviously draw Cabinet's attention to that table 3, but obviously mindful of that additional ongoing impact of that 76,000 in the last column of table 3, as clearly that affects the ongoing savings that will need to be delivered in the future. And obviously one of the things that we will be coming back to, and no doubt talking to Cabinet colleagues and Finance Committee, and obviously more broadly, is the work that we will need to do in advance of the budget consultation that we're still looking to hold later in the year. Table 4 and 5 reflect the position on our main fees and charges, and then finally table 7 shows that impact of table 2, mainly the impact of delayed spend that will still be expected to be incurred in 25-26, and the extra funding of 23,000 there. So there's a few recommendations in front of you, colleagues, which no doubt the chair will have read out in full. But I'm very happy to move recommendations 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. And again, obviously, myself or Mr. Cooper here are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No? Okay, right. So recommendations that Cabinet note this report, approves the changes to the 2024-25 general fund budget as identified in table 3 and paragraph 8.2, an 840k decrease in net expenditure, approves the changes to the 2025-2026 general fund budget as identified in table 3 and paragraph 2, a total of 807k increase in net expenditure. Can I have a proposer, please? Mr. Albert, and a seconder. Councillor Thomas. Shall we go to debate? No debate. Shall we go to the vote?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Nolan, for your time this evening. Item 15, exclusion of press and public. I propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Debenham. Can we have the vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. So we'll now wait for confirmation that the meeting has moved into private session before continuing. Was it part of the, he's presenting the part two? Is he? No. Okay. Welcome back. Item 17, Museum Storage Options Part 1. Please note this referral has been published as a supplementary document and Cabinet members have noted this when considering the item. Councillor Tyson to present the referral.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report comes with the endorsement of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It was felt that at last we'd found a potential resolution to the issue with the museum storage that seemed to fit all of our needs, and there was wholehearted approval of the proposal before us this evening. So I just wanted to also say that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee were very pleased with all the work that had gone into it by the executive member and all the officers involved. So that's all I need to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Tyson? No. Councillor Thomas to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet members, I'm going to be repeating what I previously said, so if you've missed it, you get a second chance at hearing it. But this report follows the museum storage options appraisal presented to Cabinet on the 19th of November. And I really want to thank the officer team who put together this report and the preceding reports, and for the work that that has gone into this, and also to note the effective support of colleagues in ONS. It has really been noted and appreciated. This report is in respect to the proposed acquisition of Unit 1 City Park, Letchworth Garden City, on the terms previously discussed in Part 2, to purchase a permanent solution for our museum storage needs. And the report included detailed budget costs for adapting and fitting out and upgrading the building for museum storage, and the full details were in that report. In November, we presented a detailed options appraisal demonstrating the urgent need for improved storage conditions to properly care for the North Herts Museum collection, both today and for future generations. Following this, officers were tasked with exploring viable options, one being the acquisition of a suitable property for storage. Unit 1 City Park has come to market, and it does offer unique advantages. It's a 25-year-old open plan warehouse with office space located in the main commercial area of Letchworth Garden City. Officers have obtained favourable pre-purchase report from surveyors and a full building survey. And officers have committed a conditional offer subject to approval from this committee. Significant investment would be required to equip the facility with the desired internal environmental stability to preserve the collection, and also to ensure it is environmentally sustainable and efficient. This proposal presents a unique opportunity to secure our long-term museum storage at a reduced financial commitment compared to the alternatives. It also enables us to potentially release fund equity from the Berrymead site, and to help us alleviate the storage pressures at Broadway Garden. Officers have made an offer for a sum that is significantly below the full allocated programme of 4 million for this programme, and it represents significant cost savings for our net revenue provision. Certainly less than any of those presented back in November. Efforts will be made to improve the facility's environmental efficiency, and even if the council alters its course, the property does have broader market appeal. And while officers could continue exploring other options presented, it is likely that those would present a more significant cost than this one today. Facilities of this size and type do not come on the market often, and therefore I agree with officers' recommendation about acquiring the asset and converting it, and that's an attractive option for us. It will also pave the way for us to explore other options for the Berrymead site. So I therefore endorse this report and request the committee's support for its and request cabinet support today.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Ros, or would you like to contribute?
Thank you. I'd just like to thank, on behalf of the whole museum team, the councillors for their support for this project. I mean, it will solve all our storage problems. And as you know, you've been to Berrymead, you've seen the state, and it's, you know, we're looking after the heritage of the district, and it's going to give us such a wonderful opportunity, not only to have the right environmental conditions, which we just don't have at the moment, but also to allow for more community engagement, which is, you know, in the old days, museum stores, nobody really went to them apart from curators. But now we want to open them up, you know, to let everybody enjoy our heritage. And the joy of Unit 1 is that there'll be room for school groups, for community groups, you know, for us to give talks there. You know, it has so much potential. And it's, you know, it's a really fantastic solution that's just kind of, I won't say popped out of nowhere, but it feels like that. And I have to say, I've worked here now since 1995, I was appointed to run a new museum, and we eventually got there in 2019. This store project looks like it's going to be a bit quicker than that. And, you know, it looks like I might see a new store as well as a new museum in my time here, which should just be incredible. So, you know, thank you so much for your support, and particularly Councillor Thomas, thank you for, you know, for championing it, but for all of you, because it's, yeah, it'd be just wonderful having a new museum and a new store. It's like, I think that the council, you know, can really be proud of its support for the museum. And, you know, we do provide a really kind of important service for all the thousands and thousands of visitors that come through. And, you know, it gives them all something different, but we do give a lot to a lot of people in terms of, you know, sense of place and mental health and all the things that are important, as well as just people who are interested in their history. So thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Ros. Any questions? Cultural Services Manager. Who is that? Oh, right, it's my mistake. Sorry. I didn't realise that was your title, Ross. Councillor Albert.
Again, perhaps look at either Ros or Steve here. It's probably just worthwhile sort of you saying, I mean, it's something that I answered at the scrutiny committee about the fact that we're sort of not looking for grant funding in terms of the actual purchase of the building, but would look at potentially it may be at grant funding at doing the moving the collection from one place to another and so on. I don't know whether something you might want to sort of touch on.
I can answer that. So I have been in touch with the Heritage Lottery Fund and the Arts Council about potential funding. Because the project is starting so quickly, it's not possible to get large amounts of the 250,000 to 1 million funding pot from the Heritage Lottery Fund. If you go for that, to be realistic, building work wouldn't be able to start until the end of 2027, because that would be a two-stage process. It's a very long process, but we can go for up to £250,000, and it seems that the most likelihood of getting money is not so much for the kind of the racking and the storage and that, but actually things to do with bringing the community in. And there are people whose job it is to go around and help with moving stores. I mean, it's a kind of job within the museum world, and people go from place to place and actually oversee store moves. And to be honest, we don't really have a lot of capacity staff-wise in the team, and to be able to appoint someone to do that, and also to get together a team of volunteers from the community, you know, a small team of people who want to help. That's the kind of thing that goes down well with the lottery, and that would really make a difference, because particularly with this building, then that we wouldn't be able to get into it for a little while. So all that time we can be doing behind the scenes work and some rationalization work and so on. So that's, you know, it could all work really well. You can never be sure with grants, but I think we could probably put together quite a good application, and those lower kind of level applications up to 250,000 are looked at much more quickly, and you get an answer much more quickly than the larger grants. So, I mean, that's not to say we couldn't look into other grants as well as that, but from discussions, that seems to be the way that we're being, you know, it's suggested we would have the best chance.
Thank you. Steve, you got anything to add? No, it's been covered. Okay, recommendation. Approve the acquisition of Unit 1 City Park, Letchworth Garden City, on the terms set out in the Part 2 report, and noting the detailed budget cost plan for adapting, fitting out, and upgrading the building for museum storage at Appendix A. Can I have a proposer, please? So Thomas, and a seconder, Councillor Albert. Debate. Councillor Albert.
And cheers, I think, and perhaps just to repeat at least one or two of the things I said earlier. I mean, yeah, obviously particular thanks to our colleague Tamsin for really her drive and determination and getting us to where we are. Really, it's been a fantastic piece of work, Tamsin. Well done, and all the team, Ros, Steve here tonight, Rob, and the estates team, the legal team as well. So much work has gone in this, and I think we can really be really proud of our team in actually getting us to this point. So thank you. It's really appreciated. It's been a long running saga, and we've actually got, I think, if we can pull this off, I hope Cabinet will agree this evening. If hopefully then, touch wood, all this goes through, I think we've got a solution, as Ros was saying, that actually puts us with both a fantastic museum, a fantastic museum storage, perhaps hopefully in the future, which would, I think, be really. I'm not sure there's any other museum in Hertfordshire who will have such good facilities, and I think so. That's something that we can really, if there is a new council, new local government organisation, we can really take that into that, whatever that new authority is. I think I've obviously had previous assurances that we'll obviously look to, to set obviously a tight budget around the refurbishment. It's important, obviously, we make sure that's done well, and it will be run as a key project within that, be able to report to, scrutiny colleagues, part of the delivery plan, and so on. But yeah, absolutely happy to endorse this, and as I said at the budget meeting, I was hoping that we would have some good news. I think here it is, and hopefully now we can get to the final stages in the coming days and weeks, and that purchase can go through. But really happy to endorse this, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Winstanley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Pretty much what Ian Albert just said. Totally support this. Thank you to everyone who has been involved, all the officers, and Councillor Thomas for, again, the tenacious driving of it. I've been to Berrymead, and I absolutely recognise what this will achieve, and it will be a fantastic achievement. So yeah, I'm totally on board with this.
Councillor Thomas.
Just to say, it's a building on an industrial estate, but what we're going to put on it is incredible heritage from chalk streams, Roman bones, natural history collections, phenomenal documentary records of our militia service, of our planning departments, of local news that our public do use and that is incredibly important to them. I'm really excited at the potential for grants to support the move, to really bring the community in and to actually look after these resources which need looking after, and then to make sure that they're used by academics, community groups, all sorts of things, in a way that we just haven't had an opportunity to use it. The collection goes back over 250 years. And I'm just thrilled that our generation is upholding what past generations gave us, and that our future generations will get to benefit from it. So it is just a building on an industrial estate, but it represents a lot for our communities, and it feels pretty incredible to be part of the team and to have such universal support from cabinet, from officers, but also from opposition as well, and to note that we're pretty unified as a council on the benefit of this project, which is a really incredible place to be.
Thank you. Can I say that I was on the trip we had to the building with Ros, and the look on Ros's face was as if all her Christmases had come together, and she convinced us all that it was the right thing to do. Thank you. Shall we go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Ian Falstone, you are released from cabinet. This is your last one. And at 10:15, I announce the closing of this meeting. This is the last one of our civic year. Thank you very much.